Welcome to slide 5, the last slide for this lecture. We're going to dive right into Molière, who is arguably the biggest thing to come out of the French Renaissance, similar to how Shakespeare is the biggest thing to come out of the English Renaissance, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks. So we're going to study a bit about Molière right now. This will be really good context for next week because you're going to be looking at a play of his called Tartuffe. And so it's good to have some context on him as a playwright before we get into that. So let's talk about who this Molière guy was. Okay, French comedy reached its peak in the 1660s and 1670s. Molière epitomizes what French comedy was. With his work, comedy was raised to a level equaling tragedy, which had always been more popular before, but now with him, comedy becomes just as popular as tragedy, if not a little bit more so. Growing up, Molière was given an excellent education, and he was destined for a court position, but instead he left that life behind and he joined 9 other young people in forming a theater troupe. It was called the Théâtre Illustré, and they formed it in 1643. The troupe failed initially in Paris, but it set off on a tour, a performance tour, which lasted until 1658. By 1651, Molière was head of the troupe, and then he switched to writing plays instead of just performing in them. The company became more and more successful with audiences, and by 1660, they were able to take over a major playhouse in Paris, and they stayed at that major playhouse until 1673. By 1665, they were granted an annual subsidy, so they were being paid publicly, and they were given the title of the King's Troupe. So they were sort of like the royal troupe that was sort of given a little pat on the back by the royalty, and so this makes them like the troupe to watch in Paris. Many of Molière's works are farces, which are in the manner of the Commedia dell'arte, by which he was very much influenced. So in a lot of his pieces, you see those types of like stock characters. They're not wearing masks in Molière's plays, but they are reminiscent of the types of like commedia stock characters that we talked about with the Italian Renaissance. His greatest achievements were his comedies that focused on character and on manners or people's behavior. He was trying to like mock a lot of the behavior that was going on in France during the Renaissance. And most people consider Tartuffe to be one of his greatest achievements, which is why we're looking at that play next week. His biggest successes were plays that showcased his observations on contemporary manners and contemporary behavior and on character types, but this did embroil him in a lot of controversy sometimes. The most bitter controversy was that surrounding Tartuffe, which is a play in which the title character is exposed as this huge religious hypocrite. It was performed first in 1664, but many saw it as condemning all religion. So Molière got into some hot water with that, and he had to rewrite it twice before it was authorized for performance again. So in 1669, it finally was approved, and it ran for 33 performances, which was a record of its time. Molière had made comedy a vital reflection on contemporary life and contemporary manners and behavior. For his longer plays, he did adhere to the neoclassical ideal of 5 acts, and he adhered to the neoclassical ideal of unity of time and place, but he shunned the rest of the rules. He was just that good. He didn't need to, he had kind of surpassed having to adhere to those rules. Some of his plays are written in verse, in rhyming verse, and others are written in prose. Also, most of his plays are set in drawing rooms, which was very different. Usually at that time, comedies were set outside. So it was really different for him to use like an interior setting for a comedy. So he was a bit of a trailblazer with that. He directed his own plays, and he was also often the leading man in his plays. The last bullet on this slide is a great video. It's a short crash course video on Molière, and it should help you more and more with your understanding of Tartuffe. which is the play we'll be diving into next week. If you're looking to save some time, you can actually start the video at around 5 minutes, 20 seconds. The first part of the video is sort of unnecessary for what we're looking at. So you can start at 5:20, which is where it starts to get specifically into Molière. And your discussion board question this week is going to be focused on this video. So be sure to watch. It's not too long. And then check out the discussion board on Blackboard. I'll just spend a little bit of time right now just chatting about what you're supposed to be doing this week. So it got a little funky because Patriots Day is Monday of this week, and we technically have that off. So I didn't make your work from last week due until this Wednesday, April 22nd. So by this Wednesday, April 22nd, you are supposed to be looking at the Italian Renaissance lecture, participating in that discussion board, and then turning in your outline to me from the Renaissance Research Project. Then for this week, the week of April 20th, you're going to be watching this lecture, getting those notes taken on your note-taking form, participating in this discussion board, all of that by Monday the 27th. And then you also need to be working on the final step of your Renaissance Research Project, step 4, which is due Monday the 27th. So this is all posted on the folder this week on Blackboard. Just keep track of the due dates because they got a little funky because of Patriots Day being a holiday. And of course, if you have any questions, please email me, call my cell. I've given you my number on email several times. We're all in this together. One thing that's cool is next week there will not be a lecture or a note-taking form. Our only job next week is going to be looking at Tartuffe and responding to it a little bit. So the class will look a little different next week, which is great. I think you'll enjoy Tartuffe next week. It's a great play, great comedy, and hang in there. I'll be in touch. Bye.